Okay, let's have sound check.
Testing, 1, 2.
Sound check. And we'll also have a balance check. Apparently the balance has been really bad. So just talk at a normal conversational volume.
This is my normal conversational volume.
This is my normal conversational volume. How is that, people in the chat? How's our normal conversational volume? I think it's okay. All right, both are good apparently. All right, welcome everybody. It is March 15th, the Ides of March, and we have Custodes Tactica episode 68, I believe. And tonight I'm joined by none other than Jeremiah, aka Battle Juice from the Discord, and we're going to talk all about Secondaries. How's it going, Jeremiah?
Hey, not too bad.
And we were just commiserating with each other on the current meta, and about to be rocked again by seemingly overtuned Tyranids. Now, I think most of the codex has been leaked already. And I, of course, got my ass handed to me today by Francois and Eldar and Harlequins. And so we were just commiserating a little in the background about the current state of the game.
A little salt exchange, if you will.
That's right. Always need a little bit of salt just to exfoliate a little bit, get clean, you know.
It adds flavor.
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't even talk about Tao that much, to be honest, but that certainly adds a lot of salt. Salty fish. All right. Before we start, just updates about Canhammer Team Tournament, which of course is coming up April 23rd, 24th, which is about 6 weeks away. So everybody's up to date. Should be. The captains are all in the chat, so they get all the announcements. But for everybody out there, don't forget the list deadline, submission deadline, and book deadline is April 9th at 8 p.m. EST. Pretty harsh penalties if you miss the list submission deadline. So make sure your captains are on track for that. Also, we expect everyone to be in BCP by then and have updated their faction and team names, all that kind of business. So do get that on. The hotel block is open. It has been open for a while and will close March 23rd. So if you have not got your hotel room block at the Hilton Garden, which is right across the venue, then you will miss out after March 23rd. And if you have dietary restrictions, then do let your captains know so they can send it to us. And by restrictions, I mean things you physically cannot eat, not that you don't prefer a certain type of mustard. Restrictions, not preferences. Okay. And I think that's about it. Jeremiah, you been to any events recently?
So I've had a few RTTs in the past 3 weeks. One of them playing as Tau, to kind of get a feel for them, considering I've been playing them for 17 years. I figured might as well see what the new stuff is like, so that way I know how to play into it as Custodes, get a in-depth understanding of it. And then in a couple of weekends as Custodes, trying out some new things, interestingly enough, as Emissaries instead of Emperor's Chosen, which has been kind of a blast in and of its own, and it definitely opens up some interesting opportunities with player place terrain if your event has woods at all. So that can be a discussion for another time. But
well, let's dip into a bit. What's standing out to you about Emissaries? Obviously, then the obvious ignoring modifiers.
Ignoring modifiers, that's good in of its own. It doesn't come up very often to wound, but when it does, it's people are gonna be mad. And obviously to hit is very good. That's much more of a common penalty you're going to find. But the always fights first, that with Galatas Dreadnoughts has been ridiculous. And it makes it so that the opponent, when they charge, they have to make their first attacks very carefully. It also means that when people try to slap fights lastings on you, you can still interrupt with that unit, because as per their ruling when it comes down to fights first and fights last interactions, it doesn't matter how many of each are applied, they cancel out. So that unit fights normally. That means they're still eligible to attack or be chosen to fight with, rather, in the current 9th edition wording.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a good example of this is unit of bikes got charged by Incubi. They got, and an Archon. Got told to fight last. He thought he was safe, swung into my Dreadnought, also in combat with a bunch of Incubi, did some damage, and then interrupt with the bike squad and flip an entire squad of Incubi. I thought they could
Nice.
fight last. Well, they had fight first built in, so they're eligible to fight.
Very
So
nice.
so between Harlequin shenanigans and just always fights first, there's a lot of tricky play you can do. They're not as blatantly reliable as maybe Emperor's Chosen, but they have their own plays. So that's been a ton of fun to play into.
So you're thinking dreadnoughts like Sagittarum. People have been talking a lot about Sagittarum in the setting of emissaries, obviously, because then they can advance and shoot without any penalties. And bikes still make that list, obviously, because they're just super good, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, like between bikes, Sagittarum, and Dreadnoughts, they make use of everything that Emissaries has to offer. More importantly, I think people have been sleeping on the use of Conservi as an actual chosen kata, because you can drop down a lot of action potential, or even just drop in from reserve, have Conservi active for a turn, and to push another unit that needs to be into something else into a different kata for a command point. Definitely using a lot of more of our technical tools, as if you were,
Yeah.
than maybe Emperor's Chosen would have. Like, they have their own play by being able to make things into different shield house entirely, but
Well, I think
emissaries might be a big thing going forward.
Well, I think Emperor's Chosen was the obvious one, straight up. It's like, oh, that's super strong. But as we said from the beginning, the other ones are maybe except for one of them. The other ones have their own play, and I think now's a good time to look into other things, especially as the meta changes.
Yep, especially as things get crazier. That's
Yeah,
that's the way I would define it. Between Harlequins, like the Eldar Codex, from what I understand, is strong. It's a good book, but the Harlequins they're going to give us problems. That and NIDS. So just kind of throw things at the wall, see what sticks.
yeah, yeah. All right. Okay. So originally we were going to talk about secondaries and missions, but this is a huge topic, so we're going to split that up into a couple of shows. So tonight we're going to talk about secondaries, and mostly because I anyway have not had a chance to play like all the missions yet, and I feel like talking about missions without actually playing them is kind of like just theory hammering. So we're going to talk about the secondaries, and not only the Nakwin secondaries, but also our three other secondaries, and then we'll do the missions on another show. Okay.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned the missions aspect, because of the 3 weeks of games, it seems like everyone has an obsession with the hammer and anvil types, or the table quarters, or the triangular table quarter. I have played Dawn of War once in 3 weeks over 10 games.
Are
And it's been
people
kind of
picking
silly.
picking the missions, or they're randoming it, or?
Uh, I don't know what the tournament organizers are doing. I think they're actually picking them rather than just randomly rolling for them, but I'm not sure quite what's going on. But I've gotten to play Dawn of War type deployments once out of 10 games.
Yeah, there's definitely be some bias in the community about what people think are good or bad missions, and cutting out, some of the ones. It's controversy whether the bomb one is good or bad, and so if you're a TO and you don't like it, you'll probably cut it, right? So, um,
And
yeah,
mission selection um, is a good start for thinking about secondaries in the first place. You have to consider what kind of maps you'll be going into. Not all strategies are going to work on all maps. In fact, some maps it's going to be downright terrible.
hmm
For example, like deploy teleport homers, as we'll talk about in a bit. I would not trust that on, say, Data Scry or one of the table quarter missions, because they can easily zone out that kind of territory and they can quickly start denying you points.
yeah, yeah. I
Or
played.
lure you into a kill zone and just kill whatever you're trying to do it with, because the lethality is going up.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's for sure. So we'll make reference to missions where appropriate, and yeah. Okay, so let's get started. We'll do the purge the enemy first. Assassination, which is kill characters, 3 each, and warlord an extra one. So you need to kill 5 characters to max this, which most armies not that many characters, 3, 2 to 3, maybe 4.
3 to 4 seems to be kind of the sweet spot for most armies. In
Yeah.
fact, in reading this again, I completely forgot that Warlord gets you an extra point.
Yeah.
So if they have 4 characters, that's a pretty good pick.
Yeah, so
3,
that's 13.
it really yeah, if they have 3, then that's it really depends. It depends if there's nothing else good that you can take, or if action secondaries are going to be a poor choice in a given matchup.
Yeah, I don't think.
I think
Do you think assassination is ever like a first choice? I don't think so. It's too easy for characters to hide, and unless they're coming right at you, you might not be able to get at them very easily.
again, it's one of those ones that really depends. Do they have characters that can hide or not? Do they have characters that rely on getting in close to actually do their thing?
Yeah.
If they are, you can use that as both as a kind of a deterrent mechanism. Like, do you really
Yeah.
want to throw your potentially, slightly squishy but hard hitting characters in? Because if I kill them, I get points. Possibly 4 if it's the Warlord.
Yeah.
In fact, I kind of feel that same way for the entire Purge the enemies category, with the exception of one, and that's our mission specific. That's our Custode specific one.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think Bring It Down's about to become a lot more popular, though.
Yeah, so let's move on then. Let's go. We'll skip the Astra Militarum one. So Bring It Down, which is monsters and vehicles, basically. And the number of points is split, basically. So 9 or less is 1 point, and uh, 10 to 14 is 3 points, and over 15 is 2 points, and over 15 is 3 points. So yeah, I picked this one today, for example, because there was nine Harlequin boats and 6 of those stupid vibro cannon floaty thingies. I can't remember what I ended up scoring on it, but 1 point each, and unfortunately, annoyingly difficult to kill. But under other circumstances, if you're facing stuff like that and monster mash stuff like that, this would probably be a good secondary.
Bring It Down is often one of those ones where if you probably should pick it, and it's the circumstances of, are you killing the things that Bring It Down would be good against? No, then you're probably not winning that game. So, do you need to kill those things? Yes, then Bring It Down just makes it an extra bonus, if you will.
Yeah,
like Nedzilla, you got to kill the big bugs, or they're running you over.
Yeah.
Harlequins, if they still have their boats by the end of the game, they're going to do shenanigans, and you're not going to like it. You probably need to kill them. So,
yeah,
where I would say if it's at least 10 points, probably a good pick. They've probably made it a focus of their list to have vehicles or monsters of some kind. It's one of those ones that's a lot easier to look at a list and go, yeah, I'll take that against this list.
Yeah.
In fact, even against typical knight lists, I would take that over Titan Hunter, which is the other Nachman secondary for Purge the Enemy.
Yeah, so then a knight list would have, let's say, 3 big knights. So that's 9 points, some smaller knights. So yeah, it's probably actually better than Titan Hunter.
Yeah, like I typically see either 2 to 3 big knights and then 4 to 6 little knights. So each of the little ones is worth 2 points a pop. The big ones are worth 3, and it means that in a Titanic matchup, they can't just hold back a couple of knights and try and deny you points. Because if they're alive in any capacity, or if you take Titan Hunter, if they keep even 1 or 2 alive, you have lost a lot of points.
Yep.
And they can afford to kind of choke you on the little knights in the meantime.
So Titan Hunter, 4 points for 1 knight, 9 points for 2 knights, 15 points for 3 knights, and this has certainly seen adjustment over the ages. Yeah, it just doesn't seem good. Too easy to deny.
And if they got 4 knights, then sure, whatever, take it. But that's kind of that's a skew matchup. So
yeah, I guess we'll see if and when they ever get their book, how good or bad this secondary becomes. But for now, I agree. I think it's better to bring it down against a heavy knight list like that.
Mm-hmm. But that's only if they take armature. If they take a bunch of support armatures, which most better knight lists are going to be taken. They need something to hold ground other than their 4 big things. Otherwise, you're just running into a meme. It'll be a fun game, but not really the most serious of games. But
Yeah,
I think that cleans us up for Purge the enemy outside of the Codex.
that's right. Okay, so let's move on to the no mercy, no respite. So the first one is no prisoners, which is basically like killing things, and you basically count the number of wounds that you killed, and you divide it by 10, and that's your score. And then you get an additional bonus for between 50 and 99 wounds, and 2 additional victory points for killing 100 or more wounds. Um, and it doesn't include vehicle monsters or characters,
Mm-hmm.
which
Sure.
then makes it harder to do, other than against
Well,
those like horde armies.
this just means that you can't double dip with Bring It Down and No Mercy and just auto win, roll your face across the table and win. No Prisoners, however, with the current trend of things, I think is a very good one.
Yeah.
Um, so let's highlight another current boogeyman in the meta right now, Tau. All those battle suits, that includes broadsides, crisis suits, all their company drones. They're all not a vehicle, monster, or character, so they're all worth a ton of points. Every 5 drones, that's a point. Every 2 battle suits, or they're 4 wounds apiece. Every broadside is worth 8. If you can kill them, that's a topic for a different day, I suppose. 8 wounds and 5 plus feel the pain. Why? But there's a lot of ways to get that. Also, enemy custodes. Every 2 bikes is a point. Every 4 infantry is a point. It quickly ramps up when if you're able to start killing the squads off. Pick off the isolated ones and force more hammery type units to actually grab objectives and then lure those into kill zones. So it's one of those ones that's very good. If you can score even 12 points on it, which is 100 wounds, most lists tend to have 100 wounds worth of stuff unless they're leaning into a heavy vehicle or monster skew. So at that point, then you look at Purge Enemy. And if No Prisoners does not work, we still have other good ones in this category.
Yeah. So I think No Prisoners is a good one. If we start seeing mid hordes for some reason, let's say for some reason, the Crusher Stampede gets a Ixnade, and we start seeing a bajillion Gaunts or something, that obviously then becomes good. If Guard ever comes out, it's probably going to be a whole bunch of Gribbly dudes, demons. I mean, it has very potential, so we always keep this one in mind. It's pretty good. And then you know what? If they have a bunch of vehicles and they have a whole bunch of things like maybe like GSC, maybe sometimes can kind of be like that. Not really. They're usually heavy one way or the other, I guess. But you could
I
take
thought there
both.
could be a ton of Ridge Runners and a ton of trucks or
Yeah.
a ton of dudes. Usually both, but you have to find, like, the big thing you need to be able to do is ask the question before the match. And that's a big part of 40K that I think a lot of people haven't quite grasped. Know what the questions to ask. So the big one when going into your secondaries is obviously how many characters do you have? How many points to Bring It Down does your list give up? And now going into No Prisoners, like how many points do you give up for No Prisoners? Which is going to usually turn into a 2 or 3 minute debacle of counting a point, counting wounds. So most people are not prepared for that question, and half the time I forget it's even a thing. So that's a fault of my own. But ask the questions beforehand. That's a big part of all these secondaries when it comes down to anything kill related. Ask what people have in their list. Otherwise, you might find yourself not doing as well as you had hoped.
So note for Canhammer Team Tournament, WTC format does make you put down how many points you give up on these secondaries on the list. So just to help people figure those kind of things out without spending too much time. All right. So the next one is Grind Them Down, which is basically kill more for 3 victory points at the end of the round. I think we have to become more careful about using this, because even these little units and Harlequin units and stuff can kill us back. And so I have found that this is starting to become trickier to do reliably.
I actually quite like grind them down on many matchups, unless it is basically Custodes versus lots of big tough things. Like I wouldn't take it against Knights,
No.
even with lots of armatures. It's just that's a bad idea. And even Crusher Stampede, that's a gamble. Like, you have to be going in there with some supreme confidence. However, so I think Grind 'em Down is a good one for us to think about most of the time, unless you have lots of small units. So if you're taking lots of Singleton and Lars Terminators,
Yeah.
or if you're taking lots of Sisters of Silent,
Sisters.
or even Palace. Like, Palace are kind of squishy. Or if you were way too aggressive with your bikes, then Grind might not be the best, at least into a competitive list of those up there in the S and A tier faction rankings, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I just it seems like it's becoming harder to do because things are harder to kill and killy, and so you can always end up tying and not getting that 3 points, and it's a real pain. You can also sometimes it's okay to leave the odd unit maimed but not destroyed, to make your grind easier the next round if you keep track of how many that you're grinding in this particular round. I know sometimes that can be difficult and it depends on the situation, obviously, but you don't necessarily have to win the grind like 6-1 one round just so you can fail it the next round, right? It doesn't help you to win 6-1 versus just 2-1. So just keep that in mind as well. That's a little bit of tricky part of playing grind them down. If
Well, a
you
big
ever
thing as well is make sure that you don't give the opponent the opportunity to take objectives. So scoring primary is a little bit more important. Well, the the main aspect of it is less so than it used to be now that it's
4
4, 8,
points,
12. Yeah. Um, so kill their obsec for starters. Don't let them keep that, but try not to overkill yourself so you can't get easy grinds.
yeah,
But again, it really depends on your list versus theirs. And make sure the big thing is don't split fire until you've at least gotten primary kill. Kill at least one thing. If you kill nothing on your turn because you got confident and dice did not go your way, then it doesn't matter how many things they kill. They could kill nothing. You're not getting in that grind.
oh man, every time I split, it goes bad. So I try and play by the rule, just don't split.
Well, 17 years as a Tau player myself tells me you you don't split fire. You overkill until it's dead, which is a little
Yeah,
harder for us to do because we don't have as much free fire, especially if we're going bike heavy. We have to, every shot has to be kind of calculated unless we're spamming infantry, at which point, whatever, you're doing something weird and it's a skew list. But make sure your first target dies.
kill it till it's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the last one here, I believe, is called To the Last, and so that's basically you pick your three biggest units, and if they survive the game, you get 5 points each unit. Um, and I think that's it, right? Yeah, unless it splits up and there's some other things. So this
Yeah,
used to
so
be great for us when Telemons were unkillable and things like that.
I think your audio just went out.
No, I think I'm okay.
I
Hello?
don't know unless it's catching up. Weird internet things.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, I was, we used to take this all the time when doing like triple Telemon and stuff like that, and they were very hard to kill. Um, Now, unless you're running the Telemon, your bikes are your TTLs.
Yeah, so To the Last is an interesting one because this is decided very much during your list construction phase.
Yeah,
So before you even go up to the table and see what you're fighting. And for a lot of us, it is in fact going to be bikes. In fact, the funny thing is bikes now are 255 if you're running salvos, whereas a Telemon it's 260. And there's no way to prop that up. This is assuming 3-man squads.
yeah.
So there's if you're running Telemons, they're probably going to be your To the Last unless you're doing something jank. If you're running typical MSU, minimum size squads, so you're not putting all your eggs in one or two baskets, then the Telemon is probably going to be it if you're running it. But this is definitely one where you have to think hard about this during list construction. Is this something I want to build around?
Yeah,
In
because
fact, I have a good example from this past weekend. I had 3 squads of bikes and 3 Caladius tanks. I was trying that meme or that skew, and I leaned into Crusher Stampede, not even a very good one, round 1. So I went in with that aforementioned confidence, and when all the bikes failed their salvo launchers turn 1, they did 0 damage between 10 shots, and most of them died by turn 2. Like, well,
See you later.
that was bad. That happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I like bikes as TTL targets, to be honest. I want them, I want the flexibility to be able to play them hard sometimes and not always have to think about them not dying for like 5 point loss, you know.
Well, it means that your bike units suddenly become, instead of the vanguard pushing pressure units, you have to play cagey with them.
Yeah.
Because now your opponent realizes, wait, for every bike unit I kill, that's less pressure on me, and they lose 5 points that they can't get back. So you have to be cautious with that one. So it's first the list construction phase, and then you have to be careful with those units. You kind of have to baby them. You're gonna burn a lot more command points
Yeah.
when they start realizing I need to focus these things all the harder.
Yeah.
So that's always been a problem with To the Last. Like even when I ran triple Telemon, people like, wait, I have to kill these things anyways.
Just focus them.
Don't mind if I do. Even with Shadow Keepers, they will go down eventually to mass fire.
Yeah, now they don't even have that. So yeah, even the Telemon, Neo Telemon's not as reliable anymore for To the Last. So I just don't feel like this is a super great secondary for us to build around anymore.
Not as much, no. It's especially with lethality going up.
Yeah, constantly. Okay, so let's move on to Warpcraft. And what we're going to say for Warpcraft is the proviso, obviously. So other than Abhor, you need a Psyker to take the other ones. So let's talk about Abhor first, and the only Psyker, of course, we can have is Inquisitor. So the real question then for this whole section of secondaries is: do you take an Inquisitor for probably Psychic Interrogation, or do you not take any Psychers so you can Abhor against 2 armies? I guess in the meta, maybe mostly just 2 armies, maybe 3, but mostly 2 armies.
So kind of like To the Last, I think this comes down to a list construction
Yeah, that's what I
thing that you
mean.
have to
So,
think
like,
about
do you
before you go in.
build the Inquisitor on purpose just to get Psychic Interrogation? Do you think that's good?
Well, where I was getting at with is the rest of the list. So let's just think about for the moment. You've decided on Inquisitor. You're locked in. So remember, our character protection does not extend to non-Custodes. So you still need 3 models in a unit to body block for someone, or a vehicle / monster of some kind.
Yep.
So if your 3-man shield unit loses a guy, they are free to blow that Inquisitor away. Same thing goes with a 3-man bike unit. So it doesn't lend well to an MSU style. However, if you're running Dreadnought heavy, go for it. Because then you can typically keep an Inquisitor behind a Galatis or Telemon. Telemons are less frequently seen. Or if you're running, Achilles in numbers, they have to kill that before they can get to the Inquisitor.
Yeah.
But if you manage to overlap, like if you have a 3-man squad of dudes and a Dreadnought, you can keep your Inquisitor alive, and then he can get the job done. And at that point, there's not a lot we can do in the Warpcraft section.
No.
So let's start with the obvious one, Abhor the Witch. Do they have a ton of Psychers? Yes, no. Do you have an Inquisitor? Yes, no. They kind of need to overlap in their own ways.
Yeah.
If you have no Inquisitor, then this one's free game.
So here we're really talking Grey Knights, Thousand Suns. Do you think Tyranids runs enough Psychers?
I think that's going to depend on
what they're running, I guess.
Yeah, so they're either going to be running. So now that Hive Tyrants are also now limited to 1 per detachment. So that's a big thing. No more 7 Hive Tyrant lists to give me some Vietnam PTSD flashbacks with. Which, if you never fought that, by the way, be glad. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But units of Zoanthropes will be annoying. Neurothropes are going to be annoying. I don't think Malanthropes are Psychers.
So
Hive Tyrants definitely are.
So
Swarm
could be Tyranids. Could be relevant. But traditionally, Grey Knights and Thousand Suns, which Grey Knights still more common, Thousand Suns definitely a lot less common.
Now, Abhor the Witch is a really spicy one against Grey Knights and Tyrants in particular, because you can often stack that on top of Bring It Down,
Yeah,
and suddenly you're looking at kills that are worth 5 to 8 points a pop.
yeah,
That's ridiculous. So you can really take advantage of certain skew lists with both Bring It Down and Abhor the Witch,
yeah. Or
and
traditionally,
really put the target.
traditionally also stacked with Assassinate.
Yeah,
Because
either
the
one of those.
yeah. So that could be something that we dip into for Tyranids, for sure. We'll just have to see how the lists turn out for that army.
Yeah, every Psyker character between Abhor and Assassinate, that is 6 points a pop. So, in the event that they lean in hard into that, you can really punish them for it. And we're not that, especially if you're playing Emperor's Chosen or Shadow Keepers. It's like, all right, I'm going to push that unit into Shadow Keepers, or just have flat rerolls as being the Shield Host itself, and just delete the thing. Just rerolls the wound for days.
Yep, yep, yep. Okay, we'll keep that tech around. We'll see how that codex rolls out.
Yeah, no kidding.
So even if you run a Psyker, you're probably not doing Warp Ritual or Pierce the Veil. Those are just not good secondaries for
I think I
us.
actually had Warp Ritual taken against me in the past year once, and he managed to get it off because I was playing against orcs with 3 kill tanks and a bunch of other stuff. Like, I cannot devote the time to dealing with this. So he actually got the max out against me, but 12 points for that. Probably not going to happen with just and lone character.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty unlikely. So the tech is to run the Inquisitor to interrogate. And so you have to run the Inquisitor probably up to somewhere in the middle-ish of the field with its entourage of protection. And you need to be able to do this Warp Charge 4, which is, pretty easy. And you need to be within 24 inches of an enemy character. Um, and you don't need line of sight anymore because Eldrad interrogated me multiple times today from behind a giant wall. And but it can be denied. So you have to be a little bit careful about that. But otherwise, if you are teching, this is what you're probably taking an Inquisitor to do, is to do this as a usually like a third secondary option. Have you tried this out?
I have not run an Inquisitor yet. I've built some lists with it, but I haven't gotten the chance to actually run one in my list. So I haven't gotten to do this myself, and I haven't actually run into many people doing this against me.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think this would be a good pick into armies that have tough, tough character units like enemy Custodes. This is good into a mirror match. The only circumstance where it'd be kind of sketchy is if they also have a character with Impregnable Mind, which is really our best way of dealing with this. Sisters of Silence could potentially stop it, but chances are they're not at the front line.
Yeah.
Unless you're running a bunch of Witch Seekers, the ones with the flamers, and they're actually up in the middle. So you got maybe 1 or 2 turns of them stopping this nonsense before they die. A bunch of T3 models. Good luck.
Yeah, I really missed the deny strat today to try and deny. Well, okay. Well, today was a bit strange, of course, because Eldrad with the stupid fate dice basically just auto passing this with like a min like 8 anyway, so it doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
matter. But and I couldn't interrogate back because it got multiple psychers that can for denies, so it was not a good take today, and so my guy sat at the back doing an action, but yeah, so it's also not good against psychic armies because they just deny the hell out of you, and your one dude is not that great at it. No pluses or anything. So I think it's an okay strategy, but it's not going to work every game. But then you have to think, what else can your Inquisitor do other than just being a waste of points?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so don't take it with confidence if they have a lot of psychers, or even one that has any sort of bonus to deny, because suddenly you lose 3 points. They
Yep.
do that 2 times, and you're down to 9 points, and that's assuming their characters live all 5 turns of the game. Additionally, I wouldn't take this in a matchup where you have to kill certain characters fast. Like if they're going to be in your face ASAP and they are lethal, you need to kill them. If you kill them all, then you can't
You
interrogate
you
anymore.
can't interrogate them.
You're gonna kill yourself out of your own objective.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing to factor as well.
Yeah.
Like with Custodes, you do have to kill them, but they're probably gonna have something like a bike captain running around in your face all the time.
Yeah.
Well, against enemies into the mirror match, the bike captain isn't as good as say leaning into guard or space marines or something like that, where he can just fly up and flip a whole squad in one go.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's more likely to actually live to harness all at least 9 to 12 points out of over the course of the game. Same thing with Trajan.
Just keep farming them.
Yep.
Interrogation farm.
Yep. Just string them out, give them bad things to go after if you can, and just farm points off of them.
Yeah.
Because you have to do this all 5 turns if you want to get it, but you at least want 4 turns of consideration. 3 is it's not optimal, but if you have nothing better, it's probably a good pick.
Yeah. And I guess that was the point. You often might not have anything better for that third secondary. So, for the sake of whatever it is, 60 points or something, it might be worth considering. But I'll need to test it a bit more. I was not too impressed today, but he did give me some points. So, okay, let's move on to action secondaries. So, shadow operations. So, banners. I find banners is a controversial one. Some people love their banners. Some people will never do banners. I think some of this depends on how you intend to play in your army, obviously. I think Conservi works really well if you're trying to do banners. I think Sags are nice banner monkeys. But what do you think of banners? Have you had good success with banners?
I have, actually. But again, this entire section comes down to, again, list construction.
List
how
building,
have you built?
yeah.
Now, if you're playing lots of bikes, heavy on the bikes, then raise the banners I might not work. It really depends on if you're running a battalion and you have reliable troops that can get the job done. So Sags are really good. Sags are amazing in emissaries if you're running a lot of them, but they have their own troubles in certain matchups, like anything with lots of -1 damage.
Yeah.
Gonna have some problems. But being able to go pop Conservi, act in both stances, advance, shoot, and drop actions. There have been some missions where I can drop 4 banners in one turn. 2 in my field, in the Yoler book, 2 in midfield, or 1 in my field and a 3 midfield, and you have a very strong primary position and secondary position now, because now they have to come and fight you off of those. And you're still pouring out bullets. For those who are not running emissaries, then obviously shield and spear guard are good. Sags can do the job. Being able to advance and still do actions. Most of the mid-board objectives are about 9 inches away from your deployment zone. So you have a 50-50 shot per unit that can advance and perform actions to get the job done, if you're looking at that aspect. So it really comes down to how many units do you have to actually do that with. Because if you're like me and you're really bad at 4-ups, you're not going to do it too often. Venatari, if you're still running them, or if they can just leap across, drop banners in midfield with a 12-inch movement, or 12 plus D6 if you advance them, depending on your deployment, and if you're running Conservi turn 1. Like it's either Conservi or Callistus turn 1 are both very good picks, depending on your secondary missions.
Yeah. I was actually looking at Venatari for that purpose. They're just a little bit too expensive and not quite hitting enough for the points. But they would be excellent for this purpose.
Plasma rifles exist now, so that's the thing.
It's just like and then you're losing more points. But man, the 12-inch fly infantry, OPSEC infantry would be great for this kind of thing.
Yeah, they are amazing for shadow operations. So if you're still on the Venatari train of either variety, shield and buckler is good against massed AP1 fire. You stick them in cover, they're probably going to live. The spears are very good as a offensive unit, no matter what shield host you're running. I think.
Yeah.
Just 3 guys. They're 165 points is kind of expensive but for us, it's not that expensive for what they actually offer. And if you have things that can go grab the enemy's attention, so the spear bros are not being focused at all, they're going to get some work done.
Yeah.
Especially in Shadow Ops.
Yeah.
But banners is a strong one, but it's mission specific. And you also have to consider whether or not the opponent is good at Stranglehold. If they're good at Stranglehold, I would not take banners.
Yeah, because they're going to be, by definition, holding more than you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're going to put down a banner, you're going to put all that effort out. You're going to go put your flag down, and they're just going to chop it right down by having a bunch of Gribblies that can trade up into the missions better than you can.
Yeah.
And that's always super annoying.
Yeah. All right. The next one is investigate signals, which is the one where you have to have your unit in the middle of the field to do the action. I don't think I've ever taken this. And maybe I did it once in before the new book when we used to run like 5-man blocks or whatever. But I don't think I've ever used this. Have you ever used this in a game?
I have yet to use it. It's one of those things I should probably think about more, just because things have changed in Nachmund to be more reliable. Like investigate signal before, you couldn't even start it if there was enemies within 6 inches of the
Yeah.
board.
Now
It
you
was
can clear them out.
horrendous. Yeah, so now you can at least throw like a 3-man shield guard squad or spears. Just when up within 6 inches. It had to be wholly within 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not happening turn 1 probably, unless you're using like Venatari, because it has to be infantry that does this. You can't do this with bikes.
Yeah.
Um,
You could consider this some of those missions that are very center objective centric. Like I can't remember what that one's called. We have to hold the middle to get the extra primary point. So you're like piling your whole army into the middle. Some infantry dude in there could do this. That's part of your game plan. That might work. You also have to do this like 5 times to max it out. So yeah, I don't know. Could think about it. I've never used it though.
so reading through it, at the very least, if enemies want to deny it, they also have to be wholly within 6 inches.
Yeah.
But that's any unit excluding aircraft. So they could throw something just outside of heroic intervention range, in just to deny you. And suddenly they've cut you for 3 points. There's some shenanigans counterplay with that might be a little too against us in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's not something I personally like because you have to be wholly within. If it was partially within, you could throw like a shield squad and drop them to conserve, advance, do the investigate signal. Because if you're as Custodes, if you have an even decently built list, there's going to be plenty of other things that are way more pressing as a matter than to deal with 3 shield dudes trying to do an action.
Leave my guys
But
alone.
yeah, like, is it really worth shooting at these guys? Do you really want to do this? Like, you want to because you don't want me getting free points, but you probably have bikes and dreadnoughts to deal with, or terminators if you're going that particular route. Things that are actually a threat and will start to clear you from the middle if they're not dealt with. But I don't think investigate signal is a good or reliable one for us to take.
Yep.
That leads us into the other one I think has suddenly turned very bad for us.
So Nachmund, which that turned bad for us. But even though we can do bikers now, it's you have to have the min units and troops. So that's made that very difficult for us to do now.
Yeah, this one is, unless you are playing lots of 5-man units of shield guard or
Which nobody's doing right now.
like 5-man units of Secondary actually have some play for this, but you got to be deep striking them, strategic reserving them.
Yeah.
Castellan's Mark would be the best way to go about that, but you got to be doing some weird things that means you don't have as much presence on the board initially, and that's going to punish you, I think. So for us, as long as we aren't souping, I think this is absolutely terrible for us now.
Yeah. No,
We're
I don't
way
think
too
you should take
expensive to
this.
make this work.
Yeah, I don't think you should take this. All right, let's go to one, and people ask about this all the time. Teleport homers. So this is the one where if you are within your enemy deployment zone, or you can get 4 points if you do this action. If you're infantry or biker, unfortunately, if you need to be a troop to finish it in your turn. Otherwise, you have to wait till your next command phase. Um, so this is a tantalizing one because you can get 2 if you're in the zone but not the deployment zone, and you can get and your bikers can do it because they can get places. I like the bike captain, for example. So it's like very tempting, and I really tried to play this a lot of times with lists specifically designed to put people into deployment zones. So this is back in the day of single Alaris. This is using Castellan's Mark on Guardian units. Even tried using Venatari. I just found it really hard unless you were doing the troops. Like your opponent just wouldn't let you do it, and then you're a lot of points down.
So this one actually gives an interesting amount of play to one of our relics that got significantly worse with the new book, Auric Aquilas.
Auric Aquilas, yeah.
Because you can double move out to 28 inches with your bike captain. You can't shoot and you can't charge, but you can still do actions. So this is not a bad way to quickly take him, throw him behind a piece of obscuring terrain in a very inconvenient position, especially if he can line up a charge next turn. And you just go, okay, I'm going to plop a teleport home here turn 1. And you just look your opponent dead in the eye. I'm like, what are you going to do about it?
And he's a pain to kill.
Yeah, so good luck with that. But this also lends well to using from Golden Light that come on infantry units, specifically like Shield Guard or Second Guard. So, and a big part of deploy teleport homers, I would think, to actually make the most of this, you have to look at the deployment map. And this kind of comes from my salt earlier about how I mentioned out of 10 games over 3 weekends, I played Dawn of War once.
That's hard to do this.
So, like incidentally, I played against Dawn of War against Tau. Unfortunately, it was also the one where you can't pregame move at all in the midfield, so that made my ability as emissaries to play in the Tau significantly harder. But it made it so I could look at teleport homers as a viable option. So, in like all the table corner missions, you have to, in order to really make that one work, they have to have a lot of incentive to push out of their deployment zone. It's like table quarters. If they have lots of stuff, they can easily block you out or put you into a kill zone. They can bait you into a spot you don't want to be. Because you'll drop down, you'll teleport homers, and then your unit dies.
Yeah.
Because they anticipated it. This is assuming we're playing against good players, by the way, that can think ahead for these things.
And then you're screwed.
Yeah, and then your unit is dead, and you're going to try to do it in their zone, and suddenly you're maybe getting 2 points a turn, so your secondary is going to become far less valuable, and you have to be doing every turn.
Yep. So I think you're right. You have to look at the deployment and where the objectives are. And does the opponent have incentive to move forward? Now, what's interesting is the missions do tend to focus more on the no man's land. There's less hanging around your own zone in the new missions, I find. So there may open up avenues where you could deploy homers. In my experience, Castellan's Mark is just not quite good enough to outflanking. I think you have to be ready to spend some CP on the Golden Light. And even still, like, so easy to screen you out if they have any kind of, number of models that they can really, like, because they know, right? You need to do this 3 times. And it just seems like it's really easy unless they just forget, and sometimes that happens.
So I'll actually highlight the one example I did actually take it. So I played against Tau, of all things, and the board was not great. Even with player place terrain, our selections for putting stuff down for blocking LOS was actually horrible. So that made things tough. But I still took deploy teleport homers because we were on abandoned sanctuaries, so it was finally a Dawn of War map. So that's 1 in each deployment zone and a 3 in the middle. And so I had my particular list. I had 1 squad of Second Guard, and I had 1 solo Terminator. And I deep struck both of those. Spent the 1 for the Second Guard, which means they weren't on the board turn 1, but it also means they weren't getting shot by plasma rifles right away.
Yeah.
But so I dropped down turn 2, and I actually made the bold move of The Second would drop down because I was not in army-wide conservi. It was a bad idea at that point. They went and shot some troops so that they could start clearing themselves a spot to go and deploy teleport homers in a safe spot. And actually made the Terminator do it turn 2, which isn't the most economical way to go about it. But so long as even one of those Second Guard lived, they could keep pumping up 4 points a turn. And it actually made an interesting play. It was like the opponent had to choose how much they wanted to split fire. And the Terminator actually ended up living because I ended up rolling pretty good on my 4-ups. But with 4 wounds, a lot of things are going to be hard pressed to just knock it out right away. So Solo, and he was out in the open. So there wasn't even hiding behind buildings. He was out in blatant open going, what are you going to do? How much do you want to devote to killing this guy?
So when I've used to use Alaris Terminators almost specifically for this purpose, obviously they're easy to deep strike in because just one little base. And, people are really reluctant to often go backwards to try and get it. And you do need to devote some resources to doing that, especially if you got yourself in cover or something. So, like, it can work, but again, you have to kind of premeditate it, and I think it is deployment map specific.
Yeah, in that map, in that particular game, by turn 2, there was actually nowhere to hide in the enemy deployment zone a single Lars Terminator. He was either going to be out in the open or he was not going to be doing his thing. So like, all right, you got bikes bearing down on you. I've got this little bastard coming down.
Yeah.
Make your play. What are you going to do about it? And actually, I did lose that game because things went pretty bad turn 3. But I did actually max out to play teleport homers once the Second Guard were able to just clear out some offending chaff that were on their side of the board, because this Tau player castled up pretty hard on one side. So they were able to reliably come down on one side, kill some stuff, and just go running to a building, past a building, and just deploy teleport homers until it was done.
Yeah.
And it's 160 points because you give them knives, unless you're that strapped for points, and suddenly that 160 point unit farms you 12 to 15 points.
Yep. Okay, let's move on and talk about behind enemy lines, because that kind of partners with teleport homers. So if you're going to be devoting a couple of units to get you teleport homers, you probably should pick behind enemy lines, because then now those units are also getting you another 4 points for just being there. So that those two things kind of go together. I think it's you might as well do both of them if you're going to devote your strategy to doing one of them.
It is a good one. However, there's one cautionary thing with behind enemy lines, and that it will lead to over-aggression if you take it.
Yeah.
And with Custodes, we hit hard, but we actually don't want to be overly aggressive. Look at most of the LVO games that were streamed, by the way, for Custodes. Even in the old missions, most of them played more reserved. They didn't just play all the cards right on the spot. So this is actually a dangerous one. Not as dangerous as the next one, but the behind enemy lines, I feel, is almost kind of a win more secondary.
I think it only goes if you're going to do homers, because you're not really being aggressive on the front. You're just dropping a couple of things at the back.
Yeah, you're trying to do technical shenanigans.
Yeah, if you're trying to get behind enemy lines just by pushing up from your deployment zone, then yeah, you're going to run into trouble.
Yeah, again, really depends on the map. Dawn of War, way easier. Table quarters with lots of terrain, possibly easier if you're running a fast list. So if you're running a bike-heavy list and you're able to Callistus turn 1, get that 20-inch sick move, and get in some very inconvenient places, you can start scoring this right away.
Yeah.
Probably not going to happen on the triangular deployments.
No.
Whether it's Hammer and Anvil or Dawn of War based. So.
Yeah. Okay, so we already talked about engage on all fronts, which became much harder for us with the change that that you needed to have 3 or more models. So
or a vehicle or monster.
Or a vehicle, so like a palace.
This one is good for vehicle heavy lists. So if you're still running, Palace in the modern day, or if you're running lots of Dreadnoughts and Caladius tanks, this one's actually pretty good. I actually took this against a Drakari friend of mine, and I thought I was confident about it. Because at that point, I was running a M-Series list that had a 5-man block of the Second Guard. And I thought they could run into a table quarter and hold it down. I was wrong because 4 Dark Technomancer Chronos came by and it blew the entire unit away through transhuman just immediately. I'm like, well, that's a lot of points I'm not getting anymore because I don't have the resource to go over there and take that on head to head. Because say what you will, Dark Technomancer Chronos is still absolutely terrifying units if you're running them. Do not underestimate them.
Yeah.
But engage in all fronts. It works better if you're vehicle heavy or if you have just so many infantry that you don't care if you actually take casualties.
Yeah,
Most of us aren't doing that.
it's possible another use for Venatari, but you know, I think it's
Well, I was thinking something like Shield Wall. That
yeah.
old man from LVO was like, here's 30 Guardians. Have fun.
Yeah, the old Bridger list.
Well, that wasn't even Bridger. That was I can't remember his name, but he did fairly well at LVO, and he had 3 10-man blocks of Guardians.
Oh, that was this year, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
very recently.
Okay, Stranglehold is one that people tend to default to, and this is just basically holding 3 or more objective markers and more than your opponent. I think the change to the mission maps and where the objectives are for most missions has made this easier for us. And in some missions,
I would
you
actually
just
say,
sit on your triangle and you're good to go.
I think in a lot of the 5 objective missions, this one actually got a lot harder, but it really depends on the opponent. Are you able, because it turns into a game of chicken at that point. You can grab
Yeah,
your 2 objectives, but more than likely you have to hold the one in the middle.
yeah,
So against Marine players that are actually running like combat units worth their salt. So I'm looking at Terminators, which by the way, if you underestimate Terminators, you're gonna have a bad time, especially against Black Templar or Space Wolves. Uh, they're probably gonna want to go to middle anyways. So this is probably not the best pick in a mission that has a central objective and then 3 or 4 other objectives. So again, it's very much a can I hold this from you more than one turn? Because if you can get to like even 2 turns, you're probably in a good spot, just in a board position way, and a dice rolls have probably gone your way. I've only taken this a few times, and a couple times it's gone pretty south pretty quick. I thought I could hold versus Crusher Stampede this past weekend. That didn't happen. I got some points off of it, but not as nearly as many as I was hoping.
So today I held it was the mission 1-3 with the what used to be Vital Intelligence. So kind of 6, 1 in each zone, 4 across the middle diagonal, and so I held mine and the ones to my right pretty reliably, and then this is when I lost my 6 bikes to the Scorpions who were on the 4th objective I was trying to get. So Stranglehold really just was not good for me this game because I could not get those losers off that objective. But I think also it depends on where the terrain is placed. If you have access to be able to shoot the people off that extra objective effectively, so just got to think about it before you just default to it, I think.
Yep, big game of chicken. And what kind of range pressure do you have? Can you push a 5-man unit off an objective at distance with your given table setup? Because
Yeah.
fortunately, with the new book, even with player place terrain, you place your terrain, then you pick your deployment zones, then you pick your secondaries. So you always get to see what the table state is before you decide to lean in on whether you're capable of doing this or not. If you don't have very many bullets, then it might be difficult on a 6 objective map because you hold 3, they hold 3, you don't get it. You have to be able to kill at least 1 unit.
Yeah.
And range pressure isn't exactly our forte unless you are leaning hard into it with Segaterm Guard, Caladius tanks, the works. Or unless your dice are loaded and your salvo launchers are amazing. Mine seem to be the opposite.
Yeah, mine are hit or miss. I gotta say, I don't have this experience that everyone seems to have where they just blow everything away. I mean,
I killed 2 Diamond Karens in 1 turn. I'm like, sure you did. All right.
when does that happen? Okay, let's go finish off here with the 3 Custodes specific ones, which we have discussed before, but since we're talking secondaries, we'll discuss again. So the first one is Might of Terra, which is basically It's you have to kill one or more enemy units, and you can't lose any Custodes or Sisters unit for the battle round. 4 points. So it's basically like a worse grind them down,
So the thing I need to preface with all of our secondaries, by the way,
or worse
is
versions
that,
of other ones.
well, not just that, they are extra painful in that regard. They are win more secondaries,
Yeah,
with the exception of one, and that's very situational.
the work. Yeah,
So if you were scoring high on these, you were going to be winning the game anyways. So
yeah,
it's just more points in your pocket rather than making a strong kind of counterplay thing. So Might of Terra is not just, this one is,
way worse.
you can do it. It can be done. Go back to the mention of the 30 shield guard and 3 blocks of 10 or thing, back to my characters. Good luck killing that in a timely fashion. They're probably going to get no mercy, Might of Terror on you for at least 3 turns. So that one's strong, but you got to be playing a very heavy skew. And at the end of the day, it's just a worse grind.
Yeah,
Because now all they have to do is kill one thing. It
and
doesn't
you're
matter
screwed.
what it is.
Yeah, I don't think
So
anyone's ever taken this. Have you ever taken it? I don't know. Never taken it.
I haven't taken it. I think this is the equivalent of nuking someone in StarCraft 1. You're disrespecting them at that point if you take this.
Okay, and next one is a stand vigil, which is score 3 points at the end of the battle round if you control more objectives that are no man's land objectives, basically. Again, it's like a worse
It's a worse strangle.
strangle.
Now, if this was at the end of your turn, this would actually be good.
It would be good, but it's not.
However, strangle is at the end of your turn.
Yeah.
They can't, like, if you can grab 3 objectives, whether it's just by plopping more OPSEC onto a point and then thumbing your nose at someone, or just outright taking it and going, what are you going to do about it in the next couple turns? Then it'd be, we would have something. But that's what strangle does. This, it's not even more points.
Yeah.
It's still 3 points, and you can't control the one in your zone, and obviously they can't control theirs to kind of contest it either. But it's all no man's land. It is nothing but mid pressure, and there's no extra reward for it.
Yeah.
In fact, there's
just not
punishment
good.
for taking.
Not good. Not good. Okay, so the final one, which is situationally maybe good, I have actually used it once to great effect, is Auric Mortalis. So basically, you have to pick a unit. No, you have to pick the Primarch or the Supreme Commander in your opponent's army, if they have one, or the most expensive unit other than aircraft, and you have to kill it. And ideally, so you get 5 points for killing it. You get 5 points if you killed it in melee, and you get 5 points if it was more than 6 inches away from your zone. But then you lose 2 points every time that thing kills one of your units. So I think situationally this can be good. You have to try and keep them away from your zone.
This is a really fun one. I actually
It
really
is
enjoy
fun.
this one.
Yeah, it is fun.
But the big thing behind making Auric Mortalis work is several things. You have to know what questions to ask your opponent. First off, what's your most expensive thing? If it's not a Supreme Commander or a Primarch,
Yep.
Cool, you get that established. Now you have to have an understanding of what that army can do. Do they have deployment shenanigans? Because obviously this is determined. Your secondaries are determined before reserves are. So, like, I frequently play against a very good Space Wolves friend of mine. They have the outflank stratagem. They can just put something in reserve. So they can take their most expensive thing, put it into reserve, and it's kind of like strategic reserve, only it can be from any table edge. So they can pop up in your deployment zone. So you have to know whether or not they can identify what you have to go after now, and under these limited circumstances. So you get 5 points if you kill it. You get 5 points if you kill it in melee with an Adeptus Custodes or Anathemas Icana unit, and it has to be more than 6 inches away from your deployment zone when it dies.
Yep.
So the first one, sure, probably easy depending on what you picked. If they have the ability to deep strike it or come in from a table edge, they can immediately deny you 5 points just by existing,
Yeah.
even if you kill it in melee. Now, 10 points is still a good secondary pick. That's if you kill it in melee. So you have to identify, you have to know the questions, know what kind of shenanigans they can do before you lean into this. So that's, if there's anything you've learned from anything I've said this today, ask questions. And you can learn a lot about the army, and that will help you in your strategy overall.
So give me an example of when you've used this for 15 points.
Silent King.
Yeah,
Uh,
I knew you were going to say
uh,
that.
Well, it was actually the first time I actually got to play Nachmund at all. I got placed up against Necrons. So I did the calculations, like, all right, what can do what? And he had Silent King. And I was running 9 bikes alongside a Blaze Cannon Caladius and characters.
Yep.
And this is on a hammer and anvil map, so it's unlikely he could just rush forward and get within 6 inches of my deployment zone.
Yep.
So there's a lot of little factors in. Can they get within 6? That'll cut 5 points right there. And they're probably not going to leave that zone unless something much more pressing happens for them. And this is actually a 13-point score for me, almost an 11, because he was at least able to kill 1 unit of bikes with the Silent King before I was able to bring him down.
Yeah.
And
you have to be careful not to like overshoot him.
yeah, don't underestimate your target, because suddenly you might find yourself losing points. Now, if you can score more than 10, that's still in a very good place, and you're probably going to win that game. But Auric Mortalis is a very tricky and technical one.
Yeah, you really got to think about it.
I've used it a couple more times since then. I actually used it against a Black Templar player, and one of the things you can also do with Auric Mortalis is, since you've put such a high price point on a target, they might, depending on the player, be more incentivized to not throw it at your face, especially if it's a unit that's all it does is go into your face and try to slap you. So in this case, it was Blade Guard vets. It's like, all right, are you going to give me those, at least free 10 points, maybe a 15, because you want to be a melee? I want to be a melee. I'm going to charge you with bikes to get that if I can get it. So they actually held it back, which let me, that's something, 250 less points of stuff on the front, doing something meaningful. Haven't taken it too many times since then, because most of the times it's a big block of crisis suits, or it's an army that has shenanigans, like against Space Wolves players. Like, all right, you have this big block of something. It can pop up in a spot that for free denies me 5 points, and I'm never getting that back.
Yeah. I only took it one time, 15 points against Phil and his admech. I can't remember what it's like. The dudes who like shoot a lot, the little dudes, rangers or whatever they're called. It was like a 20 block, and that was his. And then yeah, and the other 2 expensive units were the 2 flyers. So, and then it just wrecked that unit. It was pretty easy. Didn't kill anybody, and it was like almost in his zone, and it was like, well, it was easy 15 points. But and it's just kind of on my way and doing the other stuff too. But yeah, it can be definitely tricky to get this done. I think you have to be careful.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, AdMech and unit that shoots a lot, you're going to have to narrow this down a little bit.
It's the little gribbly dudes. I can't remember what they're called.
Oh, yeah. The Rangers.
Yeah,
Or the Vanguard. Either one.
It could
Both
be
are pretty
Vanguard.
solid, and both are expensive. So that's an important thing to ask. If they
Yeah.
have, like, I wouldn't do that against, say, AdMech with Lucius, but like, all right, I'm just going to Deep Strike. Cool. And, for 1 command point, I denied you 5 points, and I didn't have to roll a single dice.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, if you're going to pick Auric Mortalis, know what questions to ask. Ask if they have redeploy shenanigans, if they have deep strike shenanigans, because they get to place their units in reserve and on the table after they know what has the big headsman's mark on them.
Okay, so we're going to go to question channel. Now, there's one question here, which is a very common question being asked right now, which is, how can we beat Tau? So I'm not going to ask that of you, Jeremiah. What I'm going to do for the Discord, for you guys, is I'm going to try and get Richard Siegler on the show and tell us how we can beat him. And that might be a good show. So we're not going to answer that right now. Stay tuned. Because I know Richard.
I will say one thing, and that is, and it's because it's more of a newer thing than Nachmund, player plays terrain. It's a skill in and of itself. It's something that a lot of people are not used to.
Yeah.
So
I'm definitely not used to it yet.
Yeah, get used to that. Learn how to use it offensively. You know, placing it, and some tournaments do a little bit different. Like I know Adepticon is doing an interesting thing where you can only place terrain on your territory of the board. Now that's because they have different table setups, so they have like 8 or 10 tables end to end in long rows. So they don't want people having to spend time running all the way around back and forth or crawling beneath tables. So that's kind of a specific thing. But most of it is you can place terrain anywhere you want on that table. So you can place in there on one side or another because you don't know in current Nachmund, you place terrain, then you determine sides. So that's a very important factor. Try to set up, lots of obscuring pieces in the middle, for example. That's pretty much the best advice I can offer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We answered a bunch of Scotch Rock's questions already about behind the mini lines, deploy teleport homers, about the might of Terra, about list building type secondaries. So yeah, we got a lot of those. Final question then. Advice on how to play mission 1-3, that's the diagonal one that I played today, against orcs. Kill cans, kill rigs, squig hogs, death skulls. I think that's a hard mission for us, actually, because it's spread out right across the middle there. Any advice for Mando Fung?
Funny, because I actually talked with Mando about orcs before this, and I think orcs actually have a really rough time into us overall, especially
Yeah.
with our current typical metalists. Like, they have a hard time dealing with bikes, so long as we are respectful of the orc units in particular. If we just run in thinking we're gonna clobber everything, then we might might be hit with the weight of our hubris. But
Not like at Olenor.
no. But so the big thing about Mission 13 is we can only sticky objective those with things that have objective secured, and that's at the end of the command phase. So we can't do it turn 2 with deep striking assets or assets that didn't quite make it off the line with a good advanced roll, unless you're playing Venatari spam, at which point you're doing something weird at this point. And hats off to you, because those guys are great. They just died of plasma rifles super goddamn quick. But in the orc matchup, I think most of the time, as long as we at least have a decent number of salve launchers and high speed things, we're fine. Your data scry is all about pushing it from the middle. Your data intercept requires you to have things holding middle objectives almost every turn, or to do anything. You need to have something on your back home objective, so they're going to have something back there. You need to have something back there, preferably more reliable than Sisters of Silence, because things like Death Coptus can just come down, or Squig Buggies, and just erase them from a mile away. But
Yeah, my sisters didn't have a good time today. Those out of line of sight, whatever cannon things, just like they're useless.
the D cannons or
Just
the Night Spinners.
Useless this game. So I tried to YOLO them out just to like move block at least for a turn. Just useless.
Yeah, Night Spinners are pretty gnarly, which if
Not
people don't know what to do,
not night
Strength 7,
spinners.
AP2, 2
Tho-
damage a pop.
those platforms, like floating platform things. Can't remember what they're called.
Vol's weapon batteries.
Yeah, they come in like groups of 3. For some reason, they have 7 melee attacks. Because Eldar, yeah.
It's Strength 3 though.
Yeah, I mean they don't do anything.
It's annoying
but
when they roll. It's annoying when they roll high. And you're like, oh, what if I can't roll a 2-up save?
Yeah, but still, like, why do these things have 7 attacks? Like, it's stupid.
I've had Custodes get meleeed to death by Fire Warriors before, so that's a thing, by the way.
Okay, well, thanks Jeremiah for joining me tonight, and thank you everybody for watching, following, subscribing, being patrons on the Discord, and generally being very supportive. So thanks everybody for watching, and we will see everybody next time. Good night.